I had always felt content with my life, earning a steady income, managing things well, and living a comfortable routine, until one day, everything changed. Out of nowhere, my credit card company called to alert me about a $91,000 charge. I was stunned. I had no idea what this transaction was. Without hesitation, I froze the payment. Around the same time, my husband Jason, who was away on a trip, called me multiple times. Despite the overwhelming situation, I took control of it. At 31, I'm a manager at my company. Jason, also 31 and my college sweetheart, and I have been married for 2 years. While many of our friends had left their jobs after marriage, I chose to stay in mine. I actually earn more than Jason, which sometimes makes me uneasy about our future, especially with the inconsistency of his income. We maintain our financial independence, each of us manages our own finances and splits the household expenses. This system gives me the freedom to spend what's left over however I please, and it usually doesn't bother me, since we're both working and our life together is going smoothly. However, recently, on a train ride home, I had a moment of realization. Perhaps I had been overspending. I glanced at a debit notification on my phone and thought about checking for any forgotten subscriptions that might still be charging me, but the thought quickly faded as I struggled to remember the password to my credit card portal. Sorting this out seemed daunting, especially with the difficulty of reaching the help center. Their hours are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, right when most people are at work, and the wait times during lunch hours are unbearable. Still, I reassured myself that if a significant issue arose, like a charge over $40,000, the call center would contact me. This made me somewhat complacent about calling them myself. Meanwhile, online shopping became a quick escape from the daily grind. When I opened a new package that had just arrived, I felt a fleeting rush of excitement, but the moment I stepped into our living room, my mood shifted. Socks were scattered on the floor, empty cans sat on the table, and a phone and sweater lay carelessly tossed on the couch. There was my husband, lounging in a sweatshirt, completely unaware of the mess around him. Jason has a tendency to leave things undone, and it often feels as if he deliberately adds to the chaos at home. I snapped a picture of the couch and, half jokingly and half annoyed, said, "This is what I come home to? It's not that hard to clean up a bit or make dinner if you're home before me." His response was cool and unbothered. "If you get home early, why don't you clean the house? Don't be so mad about it." The remark stung. "I'm tired too when I get home," I replied, trying to keep my tone light but firm. "If you're not going to help clean, maybe you should think about whether you'd rather work or do chores." "Please, just drop it," he said, dismissively, repeating it twice, signaling his annoyance without even acknowledging my frustration. I shot him a stern look, but he was too engrossed in his phone to notice. It felt unfair that I was carrying the weight of both the chores and work. Was I being unreasonable? I wasn't sure, but I feared that confronting him would only make him more indifferent to the state of our home. Then, something unexpected happened. After our conversation, Jason started coming home later, even on days when I arrived early. It seemed like he was trying to make up for the imbalance by working extra hours, perhaps in his own way. One day, feeling particularly good, I dove into my chores with a little more energy than usual. Jason had been so busy lately that most of the housekeeping had fallen on me. I hadn't thought much about it until I walked into his room and saw the mess, empty bottles and cans everywhere, even on the bed. But then something caught my eye, a gift-wrapped package tucked away in the corner. I leaned in for a closer look. It was from my favorite store. My heart skipped a beat. My birthday was coming up. Could this be a surprise gift from Jason? I felt a thrill but decided to leave the package untouched, not wanting to spoil the surprise. But when my birthday arrived, no gift came. I casually asked Jason, "Do you know today's date?" "Oh, right, it's your birthday," he replied, sounding nonchalant. "Did you forget?" I asked, hoping for some hint of the surprise I had seen earlier. "No, I remember," he said. "Aren't you happy with what I gave you last year? You're old enough not to need constant surprises." His words, so casually spoken, stung. He turned and walked away, leaving me confused and hurt. The mystery of that package, once a glimmer of hope, now just felt like a reminder of what was missing. And then, just as I was trying to process the disappointment, he dropped a bombshell. "I've got to go on a work trip abroad next week." "Abroad?" I repeated, baffled. "Since when does your job involve international travel? You've never even been on a business trip outside the state." "They just gave me this assignment," he said, his tone flat and unbothered. Everything about the situation felt off. What was really going on here? I'd been feeling good about myself lately, thinking I'd earned some recognition for all my hard work. "You should trust me," my husband had told me, but it was hard to take his words seriously after I found that mysterious gift-wrapped box hidden in his room. The day he left for his so-called business trip, I saw him off in the early morning. As soon as he was gone, My curiosity got the best of me. I couldn't resist checking under the bed where I had seen the box, but it was gone. A wave of doubt washed over me. This wasn't just any regular business trip, was it? With that uneasy thought lingering, I dragged myself into work, but my mind was elsewhere. I found it nearly impossible to focus. Several times throughout the day, my hands would freeze mid-task, as my thoughts replayed the recent events on a loop. "Hey, are you okay? You seem off today," a coworker asked, concern in her voice. "Oh, yeah, just didn't sleep well," I said, dismissing it with a forced smile. With a light-hearted excuse, I turned back to my work. Just then, my phone buzzed, a strange number flashed on the screen. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something inside me urged me to pick up. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, stepping outside to answer. It was the credit card company's call center. As the representative spoke, a whirlwind of thoughts raced through my mind, thoughts about my husband, our recent issues, and whether I should even share my password. Then the operator's calm voice cut through my confusion. "This is from our debt protection service. It appears there has been a charge exceeding $40,000 on your account," she explained. I was floored. A wave of disbelief and concern flooded over me. "What in the world is going on?" I muttered under my breath. Things took a turn when she dropped another bombshell. "Yes, there was also a charge." "I'm sorry, I can't focus right now. I need to leave early," I told my boss, explaining the situation. He nodded understandingly and allowed me to go. I hurried to the train, but as I checked my phone, I saw a flood of missed calls from my husband. It felt as though he was about to confess something, but I wasn't sure what. I rushed home, threw my shoes off, dropped my bag, and headed straight to his office. His desk was a mess, but one thing caught my eye: his search history, luxury cruises and travel plans for two. These were definitely not work-related. I hadn't been invited to anything like this. The business trip was clearly a cover for something else. A sinking feeling settled in as the truth began to dawn on me. Scrolling through old emails for any clues, one name stood out: Billy. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, my anger building. I wanted to slam my fist on the desk in frustration but forced myself to keep digging for concrete proof of whatever was going on. My phone kept ringing, the calls relentless. "Oh my God, just stop," I groaned, overwhelmed by the mounting betrayal and confusion. In the chaos, I decided to use the password the call center had provided to access my credit card transaction history. Logging in, I began scrolling through the records, and with every entry, my disbelief only deepened. There it was, an expensive handbag brand that immediately caught my eye, and then it clicked. Jason had used my credit card to pamper his mistress, Olivia, and even financed a so-called business trip abroad. I stood frozen, stunned by the realization. I had ignored his calls earlier, but now, gathering every bit of courage, I answered the phone. "You finally picked up after I tried so many times," my husband said, his voice tense. Without hesitation, he launched into talking about the credit card. "Who's the card for?" I asked, my voice sharp. He hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "You mean, who's using the card? Well, it's just easier to use a card than cash when traveling for work." "Work trips? Or do you mean the luxury cruise and getaway with Olivia?" I shot back, my words biting. He stammered, clearly trying to deflect. "Why are you asking about the cruise? That was for business entertainment, just some fun." "And Olivia? And the designer handbag? Did she enjoy her gift?" I pressed, each question growing colder. "Are you really trying to justify this by acting like you don't know what's going on?" I continued, my voice steady but full of hurt. Jason faltered, the weight of my words sinking in. I understand," he repeated, his tone desperate, grasping for some excuse. "I know everything," I stated firmly. "You tried to charge $91,000 on a luxury cruise and a couple's vacation. You've been using my credit card to spoil Olivia with gifts." There was a long, painful silence on the other end of the line. Finally, he admitted, his voice small. "I'm sorry, I cheated. I'm sorry, but I can't come home until you reactivate the credit card." His plea hung in the air, so absurd, so pitiful. "Do you really think an apology and an admission of guilt will make all of this go away?" I asked, my voice heavy with disbelief. The conversation had shifted completely, from mundane marital issues to a gut-wrenching confrontation. In that moment, I realized everything had changed. The life I thought I had would never be the same. I told my husband, "Please spend the rest of your life at your resort," and hung up before he could respond. The phone immediately began buzzing with an endless stream of calls. I couldn't take it anymore, so I switched off my phone to escape the incessant ringing. A few moments later, an email notification popped up. My husband's return flight was scheduled for noon. 5 days later, That gave me just enough time to take control of the situation and sort everything out before he could come back. The next day, I started clearing out his belongings from the house. On day 2, I found the courage to tell my in-laws everything, the proof of his infidelity and the misuse of our finances. They were shocked, horrified, and apologetic. By the end of our conversation, they had promised to support me in getting a divorce, ensure I would receive $2 million in alimony, and help recover the money my husband had squandered. As the day of his return drew near, I received a call from my in-laws in the early evening. They confirmed that they had filed the divorce papers. Surprisingly, Jason had only taken a credit card with him, leaving the rest of our finances untouched. However, the woman he was with had given him $91,000. Enraged, she changed her flight and left for Singapore before him, without him even knowing. I couldn't help but wonder why she hadn't just taken his plane ticket and visa, leaving him stranded. While mulling over this, I learned from my in-laws that when Jason returned to Singapore, he found the house empty and his connection to me severed. His calls went straight to voicemail. Desperate, he went to my in-laws' house, where he faced serious consequences for his actions. The final step was filing the divorce papers. Jason had dug himself deeper into trouble, and the fallout didn't stop with our separation. The woman he had been with was now demanding the $91,000 she had given him. After repaying the money, my in-laws imposed strict conditions on him. It was like he was a teenager again, under house arrest, with a 15-hour curfew and constant monitoring by his family, making sure he paid off the money he owed. In the midst of all of this, I took legal action myself, filing a $115,000 claim against the woman who had been involved in the affair. With my in-laws' help, I gathered the necessary evidence to pursue her financially. Once the claim was filed, it felt like the last piece of this painful puzzle had fallen into place. It was a long, grueling process, but when the claim went through, I felt a sense of closure. The legal side of things was resolved, and I could finally focus on moving forward. When I returned to work the next day, my colleagues and bosses greeted me with surprising warmth and concern. Many had heard about what I'd been through, and their kindness was overwhelming. "Hey, are you okay? If you want to talk about anything, I'm here," one of my coworkers said gently. Their support was comforting. I smiled and replied, "Thank you, I'm doing all right, just trying to get back into the swing of things. Maybe we can grab a drink after work? I'd really appreciate the company." It felt good to make plans, to look forward to simple moments of joy.